The year was 2387, and Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching death approach from the stars. The alien ships looked like massive metal spears, each one 3 times larger than his biggest battleship. They moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming under the light of distant suns. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said Lisa Kane, his communications officer. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes. Everyone on the bridge felt it. They all knew what was coming. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of something that had never been born on Earth. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its elongated skull. Its skin was pale blue and seemed to pulse with veins of silver light. When it spoke, its voice came through the translators as cold and emotionless. "I am War Prime Zexthal of the Kethmori Empire. You will surrender all human territories immediately. You have 1 solar day to comply. Resistance will result in your complete extinction." The transmission ended abruptly. Jake looked around his bridge crew. They were good people, all of them. Lisa had a daughter back on Earth. Rick Hayes, his tactical officer, was supposed to get married next month. None of them deserved what was about to happen. "What do we know about their capabilities?" Jake asked. Rick pulled up the tactical display. Red dots represented the alien fleet. Blue dots showed the human forces. The numbers were not encouraging. "They have energy shields that can stop our best weapons. Their plasma cannons can cut through our armor like paper. And sir, they have 47 ships. We have 12. Jake nodded grimly. The human colonies had been expanding for over a century. 12 star systems now called themselves home to billions of people. Mars, Europa, the mining stations around Jupiter, the farming worlds of Alpha Centauri. All of it was about to be destroyed by creatures they had never seen before. "Communications. Get me Admiral Parker at Central Command," Jake ordered. While Lisa worked to establish the connection, Jake thought about his own family. His wife Sarah lived on Luna Base with their twin boys. They were only 8 years old. Would they even understand what was happening when the aliens came for them? The screen showed Admiral Parker, a gray-haired woman who had spent 50 years in the space service. Her face looked tired. "Jake, I assume you've seen our visitors." "Yes, ma'am. What are our orders?" "Fight them. Make them pay for every inch of space they take." "But Jake, I need you to understand something. We've run every simulation, every tactical analysis. We cannot win this war through conventional means." Jake felt his heart sink. "Then what do we do? We buy time. Dr. Aaron Blake is studying the alien technology we captured from their probe ships. Maybe he can find something. Maybe we can find a weakness. But for now, we fight." The connection ended. Jake looked at his crew again. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. These were the same people he had served with for 5 years. They trusted him to lead them into battle. They trusted him to bring them home alive. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," he said into the fleet communications. "Battle stations. Prepare for engagement." 3 hours later, the first battle began. Jake watched his tactical display as human ships moved to intercept the alien advance. The Kethmori ships came forward in a perfect line, their formation never breaking, their movement precise and calculated. "Firing solution locked," Rick reported. "All ships, fire at will." The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire. Human missiles and laser beams struck the alien ships, but the energy shields absorbed every hit. Bright flashes of light marked where the attacks struck the barriers around the enemy vessels. Then the aliens fired back. Jake watched in horror as plasma beams cut through 3 human ships in seconds. The US Boston, the UES Denver, and the UES Phoenix simply vanished in balls of superheated gas. 90 good people died in an instant. Shields down to 60%, reported Chief Engineer Danny Wright from the engine room. These aliens have weapons like nothing we've ever seen. Evasive maneuvers, Jake ordered. All ships, scatter. Formation, make yourselves harder to hit. But the aliens adapted instantly. Their targeting systems locked onto each human ship, no matter how they moved. More plasma beams lanced out. The U Chicago took a direct hit and began spinning out of control. Its hull breached in a dozen places. "Sir, we need to retreat," Lisa said quietly. "We're losing too many ships." Jake knew she was right. But he also knew that retreat meant abandoning the outer colonies. It meant letting millions of people die without even trying to protect them. He thought about his boys again, about all the children who would never grow up if the aliens reached Earth. All ships, fighting retreat to the asteroid belt, used the rocks for cover. The surviving human ships began to fall back, firing as they went. The alien formation followed them, maintaining perfect order. Jake noticed something strange as he watched them move. The Kethmori ships never broke formation. They never acted independently. They moved like parts of a single machine. "Rick, are you seeing this? Look at their movement patterns." Rick studied the display. They're perfectly coordinated. Like they're all following the same set of instructions. Or like they're all thinking the same thoughts, Lisa added. Jake felt a small spark of hope. Maybe Dr. Blake would find something useful in that observation. Maybe there was a weakness in all that perfect coordination. Maybe humanity still had a chance. But first, they had to survive long enough to find out. The alien ships kept coming, their plasma weapons cutting through space like swords of light. And Jake Morrison, Admiral of the Human Defense Fleet, prepared to fight the most important battle in human history with weapons that barely scratched the enemy's shields. The war for humanity's survival had begun. 3 months had passed since the first battle, and things looked worse for humanity every day. Jake Morrison stood in the command center on Luna Base, staring at the tactical map that showed red markers spreading across human space like a disease. The Kethmori had taken 6 colonies already. Each time, the pattern was the same. The aliens would arrive, demand surrender, and when the humans refused, they would destroy everything. Dr. Aaron Blake walked into the room carrying a datapad and looking exhausted. He had not slept properly in weeks. His hair was messy, and his clothes were wrinkled, but his eyes were bright with discovery. "Jake, I think I found something important," Aaron said, setting the pad down on the table. "I've been studying the alien technology we captured and their communication patterns during battles." Jake looked at the data scrolling across the screen. It showed wave patterns and frequency analyses that meant nothing to him. "What am I looking at, Aaron?" "This is how they talk to each other during combat. Look at these patterns. Every ship receives the same information at exactly the same time. They don't make individual decisions. They wait for orders from a central command, then they all act together." Lisa Kane leaned forward to study the data. She had been promoted after the first battle, when her old commander died in the attack on the Denver. "So they're like a hive." "Mind? Not exactly," Aaron explained. "It's more like they have one brain giving orders to many bodies." But here's the interesting part. When one of their ships encounters something unexpected, it has to report back to the central command and wait for new instructions. Jake felt a small hope growing in his chest. How long does that take? About 3 seconds for short-range communication. Up to 30 seconds for long-range. That might not sound like much, but in a space battle, 30 seconds can be forever. Captain Nina Cross entered the room just as Aaron finished speaking. She commanded the special operations teams that had been conducting raids behind enemy lines. Her uniform was black instead of the standard blue, and she moved like a predator. "Admiral, I've been listening to your conversation through the door. I think Dr. Blake might be onto something. My teams have noticed that alien patrols get confused when we do things that don't make military sense." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Nina smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Last week, we attacked a supply convoy by pretending to retreat, then doubling back and hitting them from behind. The alien ships just sat there for almost a minute, like they didn't know what to do. They had to call for new orders." Rick Hayes had been quiet during the discussion, but now he spoke up. "I've seen the same thing in space battles. When our ships break formation and attack randomly, the aliens take longer to respond. It's like they can't handle chaos." Jake looked around the room at his officers. They were all thinking the same thing. Humanity was losing this war because they were trying to fight like the aliens expected them to fight. Maybe it was time to try something different. "Aaron, how well do the aliens understand human behavior?" "Not well at all. I've been analyzing their communication intercepts. They keep referring to humans as the illogical species. They can't understand why we do things that don't seem to make sense from a military perspective." Jake started pacing around the room. An idea was forming in his mind, but it was so crazy that he almost didn't want to say it out loud. What if we stopped trying to make sense? What if we started acting completely unpredictable? "Sir?" Lisa looked confused. "Think about it. The aliens expect us to follow logical military tactics. They have perfect formations, perfect coordination, perfect discipline. But what if our strength isn't in being perfect? What if our strength is in being human?" Nina's eyes lit up with understanding. "You want us to weaponize our chaos?" "Exactly. The aliens can't handle unexpected behavior. So let's give them more unexpected behavior than they can process." Aaron was already working on his datapad. "I could write a program that analyzes their response times to different types of unpredictable actions. We could figure out what confuses them most." Rick was shaking his head. "Admiral, with respect, this sounds insane. You're talking about throwing away centuries of military doctrine." "Rick, our military doctrine isn't working. We've lost half our fleet following the rules. Maybe it's time to break them." Jake walked over to the communication console and opened a channel to all human commanders. "This is Admiral Morrison. I'm authorizing Operation Chaos Theory. All unit commanders report to Luna Base for briefing within 72 hours. Over the next 3 days, Jake explained his plan to every ship captain and ground commander in the human fleet. Some of them thought he had lost his mind. Others were excited by the possibility of finally having a weapon that might work against the aliens. Commander Tony Garcia, who specialized in alien psychology, was particularly interested. "Admiral, I've been studying Kethmori behavior patterns. They seem to have a very rigid way of thinking. If we can overload their decision-making process with too many variables, we might be able to paralyze their command structure." Danny Wright, who had been an actor before joining the military, raised his hand. "Sir, I used to do improvisational theater. The whole point was to create scenes that nobody could predict. Maybe we could apply those same principles to military operations." "How would that work?" Jake asked. "While in improv, you never know what your scene partner is going to do next. You have to react in the moment without a script. If the aliens are used to following scripts, improvisation might break their system completely." Nina was grinning now. "I love this plan. My teams can start conducting operations that look completely random but still accomplish real objectives. We can make the aliens think we're crazy while we're actually being very strategic." Jake looked around the room full of officers. For the first time in months, he saw hope on their faces instead of fear. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to fight the strangest war in human history. We're going to win by being ourselves. Lisa spoke up from her position at the communications console. Admiral, we're getting reports that the aliens are massing for another attack. They're targeting the Mars colonies next. Jake smiled. Perfect. Let's give them a welcome they'll never forget. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate human creativity. The plan was insane, but it was also their only hope. The battle for Mars began like no other battle in galactic history. Nina Cross sat in the cockpit of her fighter ship, watching the Kethmori fleet approach in their usual perfect formation. Behind her, 23 other human pilots prepared for what their enemies would surely consider the strangest military operation ever attempted. Ghost Squadron, this is Nina. Remember the plan. We're not trying to win this battle the normal way. We're trying to drive them completely insane. Over the radio, she heard Danny Wright's voice from his communication ship. All stations, this is Theater Command. Today's performance is a comedy in 3 acts. Places everyone. The alien fleet came forward, expecting another conventional battle. War Prime Zexthal had won 6 battles using the same tactics. The humans would form defensive lines, fire their weapons, and eventually retreat when they realized they were outmatched. Simple and predictable. But today, nothing went according to plan. Instead of forming battle lines, the human ships scattered in every direction. Some flew straight toward the alien fleet at full speed. Others began flying in circles. 3 ships started flying backward while firing their weapons randomly into empty space. What are they doing? Zexthal asked his tactical officer. The alien's 4 eyes blinked in confusion as he watched the tactical display. Unknown, War Prime. Their behavior does not match any known military doctrine. Nina's ship dove toward the largest alien vessel while broadcasting human music at full volume. The song was called Crazy Train by an ancient Earth musician named Ozzy Osbourne. She had picked it specifically because the title seemed appropriate. Ghost 1 to all ships, she said over the radio. Today's weather forecast calls for heavy plasma with a chance of explosions. Don't forget to pack your lunch. The Kethmori communication officers tried to decode this message for military intelligence. Weather had nothing to do with space combat. Lunch was a biological function. The transmission made no logical sense. Rick Hayes commanded a group of destroyers that had been ordered to use Murphy's Law protocol. This meant they were supposed to make their equipment malfunction on purpose to confuse the enemy. Engine room. Give me a fake power failure, Rick ordered. Understood, sir. Shutting down main engines for 30 seconds. Rick's ship began drifting helplessly toward the alien line. The Kethmori tactical computers calculated that the human vessel was disabled and posed no threat. They ignored it. Exactly 30 seconds later, Rick's engines came back online at full power. His ship accelerated directly into the alien formation, firing all weapons. The surprised Kethmori ships tried to respond, but their targeting systems had not been tracking the disabled vessel. Ha! Got you! Rick shouted over the radio. That's what you get for believing everything you see. Meanwhile, Dr. Aaron Blake was conducting the strangest part of the entire operation. From his research ship safely behind the battle lines, he was flooding the alien communication networks with human cultural data. Transmitting Package 7, Aaron announced. This one contains human cooking shows, 3 seasons of a sitcom about nothing, and a documentary about cats. The Kethmori intelligence computers tried to process this information for military value. Why would humans transmit data about food preparation during a battle? What tactical advantage could be gained from studying small domestic animals? The alien analysis systems began using enormous amounts of processing power trying to decode the hidden meaning in human entertainment. Lisa Kane coordinated the next phase of the attack from the command ship. All civilian volunteers begin random chatter transmission. Across human space, thousands of people began broadcasting normal conversations toward the alien fleet. They talked about their jobs, their families, their plans for the weekend. They argued about sports teams and complained about the weather on their planets. The HFY communication officers became overwhelmed trying to monitor all these transmissions. They had been trained to identify military codes and tactical information. Instead, they were hearing debates about which pizza toppings were best and discussions about romantic relationships. "Sir, we're detecting over 15,000 separate communication channels," reported the alien communications officer. "But none of them contain military information." "Then why are they transmitting during combat?" Zexthel demanded. "Unknown, War Prime. One channel appears to be broadcasting instructions for making something called chocolate chip cookies." Back in the battle, Commander Tony Garcia was running his own psychological warfare program. His ship was broadcasting human comedy routines directly at the alien command vessels. "Here's a good one," Tony said into his microphone. "Why did the chicken cross the road to get to the other side?" He paused for effect. "That's funny because chickens are birds, and birds don't usually have reasons for crossing roads, but we pretend they do." The HFY officers tried to analyze this transmission for hidden military codes. They spent valuable time trying to understand what a chicken was and why its motivation for traveling would be significant to humans during warfare. Captain Beth Miller's ground forces on Mars were conducting their own version of chaos warfare. Instead of defending the colony using standard military tactics, they were throwing what appeared to be a massive party. "All units, remember to smile," Beth ordered her troops. "If you're going to fight aliens, you might as well look like you're having fun." The human soldiers set up speakers playing dance music and began what looked like a celebration in the middle of the battlefield. But hidden within the party, they were actually moving ammunition, setting up defensive positions, and preparing ambush sites. The HFY ground forces had never encountered anything like this. Their tactical manuals had no procedures for attacking what appeared to be a civilian celebration. They called for new orders from their command ship, but the command ship was busy trying to decode cookie recipes and comedy routines. The response time for new orders began stretching from 30 seconds to several minutes. Nina's fighter squadron used this confusion to devastating effect. They attacked the alien ships using completely unpredictable flight patterns, while broadcasting random human conversations and playing music that had no connection to military operations. Dose 7 to Ghost Leader called one of her pilots. "I just told them my grandmother's recipe for apple pie. They're trying to jam the transmission." "Beautiful work, Ghost 7. Keep cooking." The battle continued for 6 hours, but it was unlike any battle the galaxy had ever seen. The humans fought with weapons, but they also fought with music, recipes, jokes, and normal, everyday conversations. The HFY fleet, designed to counter logical military tactics, found themselves completely unable to process the beautiful chaos of human creativity. By the end of the day, War Prime Zexthel was forced to retreat, not because his ships were destroyed, but because his command staff was too confused to give proper orders. For the first time in HFY military history, they had been defeated by an enemy that made no sense at all. War Prime Zexthel stood in his command chamber aboard the flagship of the HFY fleet, staring at reports that made no sense. His tactical officers moved around him with nervous energy, their silver-veined skin pulsing faster than normal. In 300 years of military service, he had never seen anything like what the humans were doing. "Status report," he demanded. His chief intelligence officer, Subcommander Veltar, approached with visible hesitation. "War Prime, our analysis computers are operating at maximum capacity, but they cannot process human battle tactics. The enemy appears to be fighting using methods that have no logical military purpose. Explain. In the last engagement, one human ship transmitted a detailed recipe for something called birthday cake while performing attack maneuvers. Another vessel broadcast what our translators identify as romantic poetry during a bombing run. Our computers have spent 47 hours trying to decode the military significance of cake ingredients. Zextel's 4 eyes narrowed. And what have they concluded? Nothing, War Prime. The information appears to have no tactical value whatsoever, but the humans continue to transmit it during every battle. Meanwhile, aboard the U.S. Liberty, Jake Morrison was preparing to launch the most insane military operation in human history. Operation Human Paradox would involve every ship in the fleet acting according to completely different tactical philosophies at the same time. Lisa, are all commanders ready? Jake asked. Lisa Kane checked her communication board. Yes, sir. Group Alpha will use ancient Roman battle tactics. Group Beta is following medieval siege warfare. Group Gamma has decided to fight like pirates. And Group Delta is using strategies from children's playground games. Jake nodded. And the civilian broadcasters? Danny Wright has organized 5,000 volunteers. They're ready to transmit everything from cooking shows to marriage counseling sessions directly at the alien fleet. Perfect. Begin Operation Human Paradox. The first phase began when Captain Nina Cross led her squadron in what she called aggressive hide and seek. Her ships would disappear behind asteroids, then pop out at random intervals to fire a few shots before hiding again. While they did this, they broadcasted children's counting songs. Ready or not, here we come. Nina announced over the radio as her fighters emerged from behind a large asteroid. They fired their weapons at the nearest alien ship, then immediately dove back into the asteroid field while singing 10 Little Ducklings. The Kethmori tactical computers tried to predict where the human ships would appear next, but the humans weren't following any pattern. They were literally playing a children's game in the middle of a space battle. Commander Rick Hayes took a different approach. His destroyers began fighting using what he called polite warfare. Every time they fired their weapons, they would broadcast apologies to the enemy. Sorry about that missile we just launched at you, Rick said over the radio after attacking an alien cruiser. We hope it doesn't cause too much inconvenience. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to make this battle more comfortable for you. The Kethmori communication officers didn't know how to respond to apologies during combat. Their military protocols had no procedures for enemies who said, please and thank you, while trying to destroy them. Dr. Aaron Blake escalated his psychological warfare program by broadcasting human philosophical debates at the alien command ships. He had recorded discussions between Earth's greatest thinkers arguing about questions that had no clear answers. Today's transmission covers the question: if a tree falls in a forest and nobody hears it, does it make a sound? Aaron announced. We have 17 different human philosophers giving 23 different answers. The Kethmori intelligence computers tried to analyze these debates for military strategy. They spent enormous processing power trying to determine why humans would discuss falling trees during warfare. The concept of unanswerable questions was completely foreign to their logical minds. Commander Tony Garcia added to the confusion by broadcasting human comedy shows where the jokes made no logical sense. Why do humans find humor in situations that are not actually funny? Asked one of Garcia's broadcasts. Here's a comedian explaining why he finds everyday life hilarious, even though nothing particularly amusing is happening to him. The alien analysts became trapped in recursive loops trying to understand human humor. They could not comprehend why humans would laugh at things that contain no logical source of amusement. On the ground, Captain Beth Miller's troops were conducting what she called military performance art. They would capture strategic positions by staging elaborate, theatrical productions that also happened to accomplish real military objectives. Today, we're performing Romeo and Juliet while capturing the enemy supply depot, Beth announced to her troops. Remember, you need to deliver your lines clearly while setting up the explosives. The Kethmori ground forces watched in confusion as human soldiers recited poetry and declared their love for each other while simultaneously conducting a highly effective military operation. The aliens had no procedures for responding to enemies, who fought while performing Shakespeare. Chief Danny Wright organized the most psychologically devastating part of the entire operation. He convinced thousands of human families to broadcast their normal daily conversations at the alien fleet. "Honey, did you remember to pick up milk from the store?" came one transmission. "Mom, can you help me with my homework?" came another. "I think the neighbor's dog got into our garbage again," came a third. The Kethmori intelligence network tried to decode these conversations for hidden military meanings. They analyzed grocery lists, homework assignments, and complaints about pets, searching for tactical information that wasn't there. The breaking point came when Danny broadcast a live human debate about whether the war was actually happening, or if it was all just an elaborate simulation created by advanced computers. "Think about it," said one of the debaters. "How do we know any of this is real? Maybe we're all just characters in someone else's dream." "But if we're not real, then who is dreaming us?" asked another voice. "Maybe the aliens are dreaming us. Or maybe we're dreaming the aliens. Or maybe there are no aliens at all." War Prime Zexthal listened to this debate with growing horror. The humans were questioning the nature of reality itself during a military engagement. His tactical computers became locked in philosophical loops, trying to determine whether the war was actually occurring. "Sub-Commander Veltar," Zexthal called out, his voice strained. "Yes, War Prime? Are we winning this war?" Veltar hesitated. "War Prime, I am no longer certain we understand what winning means when fighting humans. They appear to be conducting military operations using methods that should not work, but somehow they are succeeding. How is that possible?" "Unknown. War Prime, our computers suggest that humans may be operating outside the normal parameters of logical existence." Zexthal looked at his tactical display, where human ships were conducting what appeared to be a dance while simultaneously destroying his fleet's defensive positions. For the first time in his long military career, he began to question whether victory was possible against an enemy that didn't seem to understand the rules of war. The humans weren't just fighting the Kethmori fleet. They were fighting the very concept of organized warfare itself, and somehow, impossibly, they were winning. War Prime Zexthal sat alone in his command chamber, staring at reports that no longer made sense to him. His officers moved around the bridge like lost creatures, their silver-veined skin flickering with confused patterns. The great Kethmori war machine, which had conquered 17 star systems, was falling apart because of recipes, children's songs, and philosophical questions about trees. "War Prime," Sub-Commander Veltar approached cautiously. "Our fleet commanders are requesting new orders. They say the humans are doing something impossible." "What now?" Zexthal asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "The human admiral is broadcasting 3 different messages at the same time. One is a complete surrender offer. Another is a declaration of total war. The third is an invitation to a dinner party. Our computers cannot determine which message represents their true intentions." Zexthal felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. "What do our tactical analysis systems recommend?" "They have stopped functioning, War Prime." "They Computers are trapped in logic loops, trying to process contradictory human behavior. Half of our fleet is preparing to accept surrender. The other half is preparing for the final battle. And our catering division has somehow started planning a banquet. On the bridge of the UES Liberty, Jake Morrison smiled as he watched the alien fleet beginning to break apart. Their perfect formation was dissolving as individual ships tried to respond to conflicting information. "Lisa, transmit the final package," Jake ordered. Lisa Kane's fingers moved across her console. "Broadcasting now, sir." This one contains human children explaining why they love their pets, a documentary about people who collect stamps, and a live cooking show featuring desserts made from vegetables. "Beautiful," Jake said. "Rick, status of the fleet?" Rick Hayes looked up from his tactical display, grinning. "Sir, half the alien ships have stopped moving. The other half are flying in circles. And 3 of them appear to be trying to communicate with our cooking show." Dr. Aaron Blake had spent months studying alien psychology, and now he was about to deliver the final blow. He opened a communication channel to the entire Keth Mori fleet and began broadcasting the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created. Complete honesty mixed with total chaos. "Attention alien forces," Aaron said calmly. "We are currently defeating you using a strategy that makes no sense. We are not sure why this is working, but we are very happy that it is. Some of our ships are fighting seriously. Others are just having fun. A few of our pilots are making up their tactics as they go along. None of us really know what we're doing, but somehow we're winning." The Keth Mori communication officers listened to this transmission in growing horror. The humans were admitting that they had no real plan, yet they were somehow succeeding. This violated every principle of logical warfare. Captain Nina Cross decided to end her part of the war with the most human gesture possible. She flew her fighter directly toward the alien flagship and opened a communication channel. "War Prime Zexthal. This is Captain Nina Cross of the Human Defense Force. I challenge you to single combat, but instead of fighting, I propose we settle this with a game of rock, paper, scissors. Best 2 out of 3 wins the entire war." Zexthal stared at his communication screen. "What is rock, paper, scissors?" "It's a game where we make hand gestures that represent objects, and different objects beat other objects according to arbitrary rules that make no logical sense. Rock crushes scissors, scissors cuts paper, paper covers rock. The winner is determined by random chance and quick reflexes. You want to decide the fate of 2 galactic civilizations using a children's game based on arbitrary rules? Yes, exactly. That's the most human thing we could possibly do." War Prime Zexthal felt his mind beginning to fracture. The humans wanted to end a galactic war using a game that made no sense. They'd been fighting using tactics that shouldn't work. They had been broadcasting information that had no military value. And somehow, impossibly, they were winning. "Sub-Commander Valtar," Zexthal called out weakly. "Yes, War Prime? I no longer understand what is happening. How can a species survive by being completely illogical?" "Unknown, War Prime. Our best analysts suggest that humans may operate according to principles that exist outside normal reality." Commander Tony Garcia chose that moment to broadcast the final piece of psychological warfare. "Attention, Keth Mori fleet. We have a message from human children." The transmission switched to recordings of young humans explaining their drawings, singing silly songs, and asking questions like, "Why is the sky blue?" and "Where do babies come from?" The alien intelligence computers, already overloaded from months of trying to decode human behavior, finally collapsed under the innocent chaos of children's logic. Systems throughout the Keth Mori fleet began shutting down as their processing networks became overwhelmed. "War Prime!" Valtar shouted. Our tactical computers are experiencing complete system failure. They cannot process any more human data. Zexthel looked at his tactical display as red warning lights flashed across the bridge. His perfect fleet was falling apart, not from weapons fire, but from exposure to human creativity. His ships were adrift, his commanders were confused, and his computers had given up trying to understand an enemy that made no sense. All ships, Zexthel broadcast to his fleet, retreat to minimum safe distance. Do not engage human forces. Do not attempt to decode their transmissions. Do not try to understand their behavior. War Prime, what are our new orders? Asked the ship commander. Zexthel thought for a long moment. Survival. We will classify humans as a cognitive hazard and establish a quarantine zone around all human territory. Any Kethmori forces that encounter humans are ordered to withdraw immediately. Sir, are we surrendering? No. We are declaring humans too dangerous to fight. There is a difference. Jake Morrison received the alien withdrawal message an hour later. The Kethmori fleet was leaving human space, not because they had been destroyed, but because they could no longer function in proximity to human unpredictability. We won, Lisa said, disbelief in her voice. How? Rick asked. Jake looked around his bridge crew, all of them tired but smiling. We won by being ourselves. We won by being human. Captain Nina Cross landed her fighter and walked into the command center, still wearing her flight suit. Admiral, I just got a message from the alien commander. He says humans are officially classified as a level 5 cognitive hazard. Apparently, that's the highest rating on their scale. Danny Wright laughed from his communication station. So we're too weird to conquer? Exactly, Jake replied. We're too human for them to handle. 6 months later, Jake stood on his front porch on Luna Base, watching his twin boys play in the garden while his wife Sarah prepared dinner. The war was over. Humanity had emerged as an unexpected galactic power, not through conquest, but because other species found them too fascinatingly unpredictable to ignore and too dangerous to provoke. The boys were building something with blocks that made no engineering sense, but somehow stayed standing anyway. Jake smiled, realizing that this was the perfect metaphor for humanity's place in the galaxy. They built things that shouldn't work, fought wars using methods that made no sense, and somehow succeeded through the sheer force of their beautiful, chaotic humanity. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be.